From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, March the 15th, 2019. Well, after rockets were fired last night at central Israel and earlier today at southern Israel, there seems to be a ceasefire in effect between Israel and terror group Hamas in Gaza. As we reported to you, 2 rockets were fired from Gaza at Tel Aviv last night. Contrary to initial reports, neither rocket was intercepted by the Iron Dome missile defense system, but rather both landed in open areas, not causing any injury, though several residents were treated for shock. And the remains of one of the rockets were found today in an open area in the densely populated Tel Aviv suburb of Holon. Rockets have not been fired at the Tel Aviv area since 2014. And there are reports that the attack last night could have been accidental or that low-level Hamas forces were responsible. In response to the rockets, the IDF struck over 100 targets in Gaza, including a rocket manufacturing site. 9 rockets were then fired from Gaza at southern Israel, some of which were intercepted by the Iron Dome. No injuries were caused. Later today, the Khan public broadcaster reported that efforts from Egypt led to an informal ceasefire agreement, though there was no confirmation of that from Israel. Meanwhile, Hamas leaders called off riots that are normally held on Fridays along the Gaza security fence. The terror group said it was exceptionally postponing its activities in keeping with the public interest, noting that the so-called March of Return protests will continue in the coming weeks, especially in preparation for the 1-year anniversary of their beginning on March 30th. Israel's leaders and Jewish organizations around the world shared their horror and condemnation of the terror attack at 2 mosques in New Zealand today that left 49 people dead. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wrote that Israel mourns the wanton murder of innocent worshippers in Christchurch and condemns the brazen act of terror in New Zealand. Israel's President Reuven Rivlin said murder of people at prayer in their most holy and sacred place is a depraved and despicable act. For people of all religions and of none, a red line has been crossed. The New Zealand Jewish Council offered their support to the Muslim community, and for the first time in history, synagogues in New Zealand are closed this Shabbat in an act of solidarity. CEO of the American Jewish Committee, David Harris, said, "We in the United States have witnessed horrific attacks on houses of worship, including churches, mosques, and synagogues. The answer," he said, "must be unity, solidarity, and linked arms against evil." Leaders of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Arthur Stark and Malcolm Hoenlein, said such outrages cannot be tolerated in any civil society. All people of goodwill must join in condemning this barbaric act. Well, after a California school's faculty voted in favor of ending its study abroad program at an Israeli university, its president said he would ignore that recommendation. A recommendation to suspend Pitzer College's study program at Haifa University passed 68 to 25 yesterday. Following the vote, the school's president, Melvin Oliver, refused the recommendation, which he said singled out Israel and was therefore prejudiced. Oliver said the recommendation puts in place a form of academic boycott of Israel and in the process sets us on a path away from the free exchange of ideas, a direction which ultimately destroys the academy's ability to fulfill our educational mission. Well, Jewish organizations echoed and welcomed the sentiment. The American Jewish Committee wrote on social media that the responsibilities of a leading university include providing as many opportunities for education and research as possible, not politicizing academia. Executive Director of Research and Strategy at Stand With Us, Max Samarov, said in reality this vote was designed to push a narrow anti-Israel agenda that harms students, violates academic freedom, and fuels more conflict and injustice in the Middle East. And University of Haifa President Ron Rabin said the Pitzer boycott was particularly misguided, noting that 35% of his school students are Arabs. He said this is diversity, coexistence, and tolerance at its finest. The Special Olympic World Games are underway. The international competition taking place this year in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, welcomed over 7,000 athletes from more than 190 countries, including Israel, whose delegation of some 24 athletes proudly made their way into the Zayed Sports City Arena for the opening ceremonies yesterday. This afternoon, Israeli swimmer Avital Naveh took third place at the 100-meter competition, winning Israel's first medal at the World Games. And in Jerusalem today, over 40,000 runners, among them 4,600 from 80 countries around the world, ran through the city's streets, taking part in the 9th annual Jerusalem Marathon, the most participants to take part in the race to date. 33-year-old Ronald Kimeli won the men's marathon, and 35-year-old Kamayo Nancy Chepngetich won the women's, both hailing from Kenya. The race took runners through some of Jerusalem's historic and beautiful sites, including within the walls of the Old City, past Mount Zion, Mount Scopus, and the Mount of Olives. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, March the 15th. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed by a concert with cellist Danielle Akta and pianist Shira Shaked. At 8, historian and author Simon Shama discusses part 2 of the story of the Jews. At 9, it's the film Leah and Daria, the true story of 2 young dancers in Croatia and the devastating invasion of Nazi Germany. And coming up right after this newscast, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin looks at this week's Torah portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, March the 15th, 2019. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom.